The scent of espresso and fresh cornetti filled the air as I wiped down the marble counter for what felt like the 100th time that morning. My fingers ached from gripping the cloth too tightly, a habit I'd developed over the past 3 months of working at Cafe Bellini. The morning rush had finally subsided, leaving behind a battlefield of empty cups and crumpled napkins scattered across the small tables. Palermo in October was beautiful in a way that made my chest ache. Golden sunlight streamed through the cafe's arched windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny spirits. Outside, the cobblestone streets of the historic district bustled with tourists clutching cameras and locals hurrying to their destinations. I'd chosen this city deliberately. Far enough from Milan to feel like a fresh start, yet familiar enough that I could blend into the rhythms of Italian life. Raffaella. Table say needs clearing, Marco called from behind the espresso machine, his thick Sicilian accent turning the number into a melody. He was the owner's nephew, barely 20, with an easy smile that reminded me why I'd needed to leave my old life behind. Simple. Uncomplicated. Safe. I grabbed a tray and moved toward table 6, my sensible flats silent against the worn terracotta tiles. This cafe was nothing like the glittering social events I'd grown up attending. No designer dresses, no whispered conversations laden with double meanings, no careful navigation of family alliances and business arrangements that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with power. Here, I was just Raffaella. Not Raffaella Mancini, daughter of one of Milan's most prominent gallery owners. Not the woman who'd spent years perfecting the art of appearing interested while remaining detached. Just a girl who made decent cappuccinos and was learning to appreciate the freedom of anonymity. I was loading dirty cups onto my tray when the cafe door opened. The small bell above it chimed, a cheerful sound that had become as familiar as my own heartbeat. I didn't look up immediately, too focused on balancing the precarious stack of dishes. "Buongiorno, find a seat anywhere," Marco called out in his broken English, assuming as he always did that anyone entering after 10 a.m. must be a tourist. But something made me pause. A shift in the air, perhaps, or the sudden silence that fell over the cafe like a held breath. When I finally turned, tray still balanced in my hands, my entire world tilted on its axis. Pietro Bernardi stood just inside the doorway, and time seemed to fold in on itself. He looked exactly as I remembered, and nothing like I remembered all at once. Tall, easily 6 feet, with that same athletic build that I'd traced with my fingers one unforgettable night 6 months ago. His dark hair was shorter now, styled with precision rather than the slightly tousled look he'd worn in Milan. The charcoal suit he wore was impeccably tailored, the kind of quality that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. But it was his eyes that made my breath catch. Storm gray, intense, fixed on me with a recognition that sent ice water through my veins. Those same eyes that had looked at me with heat and hunger in that hotel room. The eyes of a man I'd convinced myself I'd never see again. The tray slipped. I caught it at the last second, cups rattling against each other in a cacophony that shattered the frozen moment. Heat flooded my cheeks as several patrons turned to look, but I couldn't tear my gaze away from him. He moved then, with a fluid grace that I remembered too well. Not toward me directly, but to a table near the window, the corner table. The one that offered the best view of the entire cafe and, I realized with growing dread, an unobstructed sight line to the counter where I worked. "Raffaella, are you all right?" Marco appeared at my elbow, his young face creased with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed, though my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. "Just tired." I forced myself to move, to carry the tray to the kitchen, to breathe, but I could feel Pietro's gaze following me like a physical touch. When I finally had to emerge, had to face the inevitable, I found him settled at that corner table, a newspaper spread before him, though I suspected he wasn't reading a single word. "Would you like me to take his order?" Marco offered, picking up on my discomfort with the intuition of someone who'd learned to read tourists and locals alike. "No," I heard myself say. "I'll do it." I had to. Running would only confirm what I suspected he already knew. That I'd left Milan deliberately, that I'd been hiding, that the woman who'd spent one passionate night with him and then disappeared without a trace had reasons beyond simple regret. I smoothed down my black apron, tucked a strand of dark hair behind my ear, and crossed the cafe floor. Each step felt like walking through water. By the time I reached his table, my heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Buongiorno," I said, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "What can I get for you?" He looked up slowly, deliberately, as though he'd been waiting for this exact moment. Up close, I could see details I'd forgotten, or perhaps had never let myself fully catalog. The small scar through his left eyebrow, the way his jaw was shadowed with the barest hint of stubble, perfectly maintained, the silver cufflinks at his wrists, engraved with a symbol I didn't recognize. Raffaella. My name in his mouth was a statement, not a question. His Italian accent was more pronounced than I remembered, lending a dangerous musicality to the single word. "I wondered if you'd recognize me." "I wasn't sure you'd recognize me," I countered, though we both knew it for the lie it was. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "I could never forget you, Kara. Not in 6 months. Not in 6 years. Not ever." The endearment made my skin prickle. "Kara. Darling." It was casual in Italian, the kind of thing strangers said to each other. But the way he said it carried weight, possession, promise. "What are you doing here?" The question escaped before I could stop it, before I could remember to maintain the professional distance this situation demanded. "Having coffee," he replied smoothly, though his eyes never left my face. Unless that's a crime in Palermo. You know what I mean. Do I? He leaned back in his chair, the picture of casual ease, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the predatory stillness of a man who'd learned to wait for exactly the right moment to strike. "Perhaps you should ask yourself what you're doing here, running away to Sicily like a thief in the night." I didn't run away. The defensive edge in my voice betrayed me. "No?" One dark eyebrow rose. "Then what do you call disappearing from Milan without a word? Not answering your phone? Abandoning your friends? Your family?" Heat flooded my face. "That's none of your business." "Everything about you is my business, Raffaella." His voice dropped lower, intimate, despite the public setting. "It became my business the moment you let me touch you, the moment you said my name in the dark, the moment you left without giving me a chance to wake beside you." I gripped my notepad harder, using the small pain as an anchor to reality. One night doesn't give you the right to. "One night?" He interrupted softly, and there was something dangerous in his tone now. "Is that what you tell yourself? That it was just one night, easily forgotten?" It was a mistake. The words tasted like ash. Was it? He tilted his head, studying me with an intensity that made me want to step back, to run, to do anything except stand there under the weight of his scrutiny. Because I don't make mistakes, Kara. I'm very deliberate about everything I do, including this. Including what? Finding you. The simple statement sent a chill down my spine. You followed me here. I prefer to think of it as claiming what's mine. I'm not yours. But my voice wavered, betraying the lie. His smile widened fractionally, as though he'd heard the uncertainty beneath my words. We both know that's not true. You felt it that night. The connection between us. The way your body responded to mine. The way you said my name like a prayer. Stop. I glanced around, suddenly aware that we were in a public cafe, that Marco was watching from behind the counter with open curiosity, that other patrons had begun to notice the intensity of our exchange. Why? Pietro leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than a shout. Because the truth makes you uncomfortable? Because you'd rather pretend that what we shared meant nothing? It did mean nothing. The lie came easier now, practiced. You were a stranger in a hotel bar. I was having a bad night. We made poor choices. That's all. Something flickered in his gray eyes. Hurt, perhaps, quickly masked by calculation. Then you won't mind taking my order. The abrupt shift left me off balance. What? My order, Raffaella? Isn't that what you came to my table for? To serve me? The double meaning in his words was unmistakable. I straightened my spine, drawing on every lesson in composure I'd ever learned from my mother's careful instructions on navigating high society. What would you like? Espresso, double shot, and whatever your recommendation is for something sweet. I find myself craving something. Decadent. The way he said decadent made heat pool low in my stomach, unwanted and unwelcome. I scribbled the order on my pad without meeting his eyes. I'll bring it right out. Raffaella. His hand shot out as I turned to leave, catching my wrist with surprising gentleness. His thumb found my pulse point, pressing lightly enough to feel my racing heartbeat without causing pain. We need to talk. Really talk. There's nothing to talk about. Then why are you trembling? I jerked my hand away, the touch burning like a brand. I have work to do. When do you finish your shift? That's none of your concern. 8 o'clock, Marco called from across the cafe, apparently having given up any pretense of not listening. She finishes at 8. I shot him a glare that promised retribution, but Pietro's satisfied smile made my stomach drop. Perfect. I'll be waiting. Don't bother. Oh, Cara, he said softly, that dangerous gentleness back in his voice. Bothering is exactly what I plan to do. Until you stop running. Until you admit the truth. Until you accept what you already know in your heart. And what's that? He stood then, rising to his full height, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and bergamot. The same scent that had haunted my dreams for 6 months. That you're mine, he said simply. You've been mine since that night, and I don't let go of what's mine, Raffaella. Not ever. He placed several euros on the table, far more than the cost of an espresso, and walked toward the door. But at the threshold, he paused, looking back over his shoulder. 8 o'clock. Don't make me come find you. The bell chimed as he left, but the weight of his presence remained, heavy and inescapable as the Sicilian sun. I managed to hold myself together until my lunch break. Marco, bless him, didn't ask questions when I grabbed my bag and practically ran out the cafe's back entrance. My hand shook as I fumbled for my phone, dialing the only person who might understand what I was facing. Pronto? Sophia's voice was breathless, probably interrupted from one of her yoga sessions. He found me. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. A pause, then quieter, more serious. Pietro? He just walked into my cafe like he owned the place. I pressed my back against the sun-warmed stone wall of the alley, trying to slow my racing heart. Sophia, how did he find me? Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice carried a note of guilt that made my stomach drop. Raf, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago. What did you do? Nothing. I swear I didn't tell him where you were, but... She exhaled heavily. Do you remember that night? The night you met him? How could I forget? Sophia's family had thrown one of their legendary parties at their Milan estate. I'd been her +1, dragged along despite my protestations that I needed to stay home and work on catalog descriptions for my father's next gallery exhibition. She'd insisted, claiming I needed to live a little, to stop hiding behind my work and my careful distance from the world she inhabited. Of course I remember. Pietro was there because of my brother. Luca brought him as his guest. My blood ran cold. Your brother knows Pietro. Raf. Sophia's voice was gentle, apologetic. My family has known the Bernardi family for years. Pietro isn't just some businessman, he's... Don't. I cut her off, not wanting to hear it confirmed. Don't tell me. But she continued anyway. He's the consigliere for the Moretti family. Has been for almost a decade. He's brilliant, Raf. Dangerous. The kind of man who solves problems with a phone call and makes people disappear with a word. The world tilted. I'd suspected, of course. The way men had deferred to him at that party. The expensive suit that fit too perfectly. The bodyguards who'd waited discreetly outside the hotel. But suspecting and knowing were two entirely different things. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because you were so careful, Sophia said. You never got involved with anyone from our world. You kept your distance from all the families, all the complications. And I thought maybe, just this once, you could have something without all the baggage. I didn't know you'd actually. She trailed off delicately. Sleep with him? Run away from him. Sophia's correction was pointed. Raf, what happened that night? After you left together? I closed my eyes, letting myself remember for the first time in months. The hotel suite, his hands on my skin, the way he'd looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered in the entire world. The whispered words in Italian that I'd only half understood but had felt down to my bones. And then, in the gray dawn light, the phone call he'd taken in the bathroom. The conversation in rapid Italian that I'd overheard through the door. Words like familia, vendetta, sangue, family, vendetta, blood. I dressed in silence and left before he'd finished the call. Coward that I was. It doesn't matter, I finally said. That was 6 months ago. I've built a new life here. Raf, listen to me. Sophia's voice took on an urgent tone. If Pietro Bernardi came to Palermo to find you, it's not because he wants to reminisce about old times. Men like him don't leave Milan on a whim. Then why is he here? You really don't know? Know what? Sophia was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then, Palermo is Moretti territory, has been for generations. If Pietro's here, it's because he has business with the Sicilian branch. And if he's sitting in your cafe, watching you serve coffee. She trailed off meaningfully. What? He's claiming you, Raf, publicly. That's how it works in their world. By being seen with you, by making it clear he has an interest, he's putting you under his protection. Which also means, I'm his property, I finished bitterly. I was going to say untouchable to others. But yes, essentially the same thing. I wanted to scream, to throw my phone, to run again, further this time. Maybe to the mainland. Maybe out of Italy, entirely. I can't do this, Sophia. I can't be part of that world. I don't think you have a choice anymore. Her words, though gentle, carried the weight of inevitability. Not now that he's made his intentions clear. After we hung up, I stood in that alley for a long time, watching shadows lengthen as afternoon shifted toward evening. Tourists passed by the alley entrance, laughing and taking photos, blissfully unaware of the currents that ran beneath Palermo's beautiful surface, the hidden power structures, the families that controlled everything from shipping ports to city council votes, the men who smiled at charity galas while ordering executions with the same breath. I'd thought I could escape it by leaving Milan, by cutting ties with Sophia's world and building something simpler, cleaner. But I'd been naive. The Italian underworld wasn't something you could outrun. It was a web that stretched across cities, across regions, across generations. And I'd walked right into it the moment I'd said yes to Pietro's offer of a drink 6 months ago. When I returned to the cafe, Marco was serving the afternoon crowd with his usual cheerful efficiency. He shot me a concerned look as I tied my apron back on, but wisely didn't comment on my red-rimmed eyes, or the tension in my shoulders. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of espresso shots and forced smiles. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting Pietro to return, half hoping he would so I could. What? Yell at him? Demand he leave me alone? The problem was, a treacherous part of me didn't want him to leave. That night 6 months ago had been the most alive I'd felt in years. For once, I hadn't been Raffaella Mancini, art gallery heiress, carefully maintaining the perfect balance of friendly distance with everyone in Sophia's world. I'd been just Raffaella, a woman attracted to a man. Simple. Uncomplicated. Except nothing with Pietro Bernardi was ever simple. "You should go home," Marco said as 8 o'clock approached. "You've been distracted all afternoon. If this is about that man from this morning..." "It's not." He gave me a look that said he didn't believe me for a second. "Raffaella, I may be young, but I'm not blind. The way he looked at you. That's not a casual interest." "I know. Is he dangerous?" I almost laughed at the understatement. "Very. Then why do you look like you want to go to him?" That stopped me cold. "I don't..." "Yes, you do." Marco's usual easy smile was gone, replaced by a solemnity that made him seem older than his 20 years. "My nonna used to say that some men are like the sea. Beautiful, magnetic, but capable of drowning you if you're not careful. This man, he's like that. I can see it. Your nonna was a wise woman. She was. She also said that sometimes the only way to survive the sea is to learn to swim in it, not fight against it, not try to stay on the shore, but actually swim." I considered his words as I clocked out and gathered my things. The evening air was cool when I stepped outside, carrying the scent of jasmine and sea salt. Palermo's historic district was coming alive with nighttime energy. Restaurants opening their doors, couples strolling hand in hand, street musicians setting up their instruments. And leaning against a black Mercedes parked directly across from the cafe, dressed in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, was Pietro. He straightened when he saw me, and even from across the street, I could feel the intensity of his focus. He said something to the man standing beside him, a bodyguard unmistakably, who nodded and moved to open the car's rear door. I could walk away, could head in the opposite direction, lose myself in Palermo's narrow streets. I'd done it before, after all. But Marco's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes, the only way to survive the sea was to learn to swim in it. I crossed the street. Pietro watched me approach, his gray eyes tracking my every movement. When I stopped in front of him, close enough to touch but carefully maintaining distance, his lips curved into that dangerous, almost smile. "I wasn't sure you'd come. I'm here to tell you to leave me alone. Are you?" His voice was soft, intimate despite the public setting. "Because it looks to me like you're here because you couldn't stay away. Your ego is showing." "It's not ego if it's truth, Kara." He reached out slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted. When I didn't, his fingers brushed a strand of hair from my face, tucking it behind my ear with devastating gentleness. "You felt it that night. This pull between us. The inevitability. There's no such thing as inevitability." "No?" His hand moved to cup my cheek, thumb tracing my cheekbone with a touch that made me want to lean into it despite every rational thought screaming at me to maintain distance. "Then explain why you're trembling right now. Why your pulse is racing. Why you came to me instead of running. Because I want answers. I forced steel into my voice. You followed me here. You invaded my life. The least you can do is tell me why. I think you know why. Pretend I don't. He was silent for a long moment, his gray eyes searching mine as though weighing how much truth to reveal. Finally, he dropped his hand from my face, but the loss of contact felt like a physical ache. Get in the car, Rafaela. Let me buy you dinner, and I'll tell you everything you want to know. I don't think... Please. The simple word, spoken without arrogance or assumption, stopped my refusal cold. One dinner. After that, if you still want me to leave, I will. I didn't believe him. Couldn't believe him. But the exhaustion of 6 months spent running, 6 months spent looking over my shoulder, 6 months spent lying to myself about why I'd really left Milan, crashed over me like a wave. One dinner, I agreed. And then, you leave me alone. His smile was slow and absolutely devastating. As you wish, Cara. The lie was obvious to both of us, but I got in the car anyway. The restaurant Pietro chose was small, family-owned, tucked away in a narrow street that tourists never found. The kind of place where the menu wasn't written down, and the owner greeted regular customers with embraces and rapid Sicilian that was more Arabic and Greek than Italian. The owner, a silver-haired man with weathered hands and sharp eyes, took one look at Pietro and ushered us through the main dining room to a private courtyard in the back. Strings of lights hung overhead, casting warm pools of illumination over a single table set with simple white linens and a candle flickering in a glass holder. Signor Bernardi, it's an honor. The owner bowed slightly, a gesture of respect that spoke volumes about Pietro's influence even here in Sicily, far from Milan's power centers. The usual wine? Per favore, Antonio. And whatever Teresa has prepared tonight, we'll trust her judgment. After Antonio retreated, leaving us alone in the intimate space, I settled into my chair and studied the man across from me. In the candlelight, Pietro's features were softer somehow, less intimidating than they'd been in the harsh fluorescence of the cafe. He knows you well, I observed. I've been coming here since I was assigned to Palermo 5 years ago. Pietro poured wine for both of us, a deep red that smelled of cherries and oak. Antonio's family has served the Morettis for 3 generations. His father worked at one of our shipping companies. His grandfather captained one of our vessels during the war. The war. The Second World War, Cara. Not everything in our world is about crime and violence. His tone was gentle, almost amused. Some families simply have long memories and deep loyalties. I took a sip of wine, using the moment to gather my thoughts. Sophia told me what you are, what you do. Did she? He didn't seem surprised or concerned. And what exactly did she tell you? That you're the consigliere for the Moretti family, that you've been doing it for almost a decade, that you're dangerous. All true. He swirled his wine, watching the liquid catch the candlelight. Though I prefer to think of myself as a strategic problem solver rather than dangerous. That's semantics. No, it's accuracy. I don't hurt people for pleasure, Rafaela. I'm not a soldier or an enforcer. I'm the man they call when situations require. Delicate handling. Delicate handling. I set my glass down with more force than necessary. You make it sound so civilized. It is civilized. Most of what I do happens in boardrooms and over contract negotiations. I prevent conflicts rather than starting them. I find compromises when others see only war. And when compromise isn't possible? His gray eyes met mine steadily. Then I do what's necessary to protect my family's interests. But those occasions are rarer than you might think. Antonio returned then with the first course. A simple ensalada with fresh mozzarella, tomatoes still warm from the afternoon sun, and basil that perfumed the air. We ate in silence for a few moments, and I had to admit that Pietro had chosen well. The food was exceptional, each ingredient singing with flavor. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked finally. "That night in Milan. You let me think you were just a businessman." "I am a businessman. The Morettis have legitimate interests across Italy. Shipping, real estate, restaurants, hotels. I manage many of those operations." "That's not what I mean, and you know it." He set down his fork, giving me his full attention. "Would it have mattered? If I'd told you that night that I was consigliere to a Mafia family, would you have stayed?" "No." "Exactly. And I wasn't ready for you to run. Not then. Not after finally finding someone who looked at me and saw Pietro. Not the title. Not the power. Not the danger. Just a man." His honesty caught me off guard. "That's why you didn't tell me your full name. You introduced yourself as just Pietro." "Yes, because I wanted one night where I could be normal, where I could be with a woman who wanted me for myself, not for what I could do for her family or what advantages an alliance might bring." He reached across the table, his hand hovering near mine without quite touching. "And then you walked into that hotel bar, looking lost and lonely and absolutely beautiful, and I thought maybe the universe was finally giving me something real." I wasn't lost. No. His thumb brushed against my knuckles, the lightest of touches. "Then why were you sitting alone in a hotel bar, drinking wine and looking like you wanted to be anywhere else?" I pulled my hand back, hating how much I'd wanted to let him keep touching me. "I was hiding from Sophia's party. All those people, all that superficial conversation about nothing that matters. I needed air, space, quiet." "So you went to a hotel bar?" His lips quirked with amusement. "It was closer than going home, and I thought no one would know me there, that I could just sit and breathe without performing." "Performing," he repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, I know that feeling well. Every day is a performance for people like us, saying the right things, maintaining the right alliances, never showing weakness. We're nothing alike, aren't we?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me with that unnerving intensity. "You're Raffaella Mancini, daughter of Leonardo Mancini, one of Milan's most respected art dealers. You grew up in a world of culture and sophistication, but also of careful social navigation. Every gallery opening, every charity event, every family dinner was about maintaining your father's reputation, about being the perfect daughter who could charm collectors and spot forgeries and never ever cause scandal. I hated that he'd researched me so thoroughly, hated even more that he was right. My father's work has nothing to do with crime. No, but it has everything to do with power. Old money families, influential collectors, politicians who need to launder their reputations through culture. You think the art world is clean? Kara, it's just as dirty as mine, just better at hiding it." "That's not true?" he interrupted gently. "Then why did you leave Milan? Why did you abandon your father's gallery, your life, your friends, everything you'd built, and run to Sicily to work in a cafe?" The question hit like a physical blow. Because he was right. I had run. And not just from him. "I wanted something different," I said finally. "Something honest." "And is serving coffee to tourists honest?" "More honest than pretending to care about which shade of blue Bellini used when I know the painting is probably stolen or forged, or bought with money from someone's offshore accounts." Pietro was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear him. "Who hurt you, Raffaella?" The question was so unexpected, so gentle, that tears pricked my eyes before I could stop them. "What?" "Someone hurt you. Someone made you lose faith in the world you were born into." "Who was it?" I wanted to lie, to deflect, to maintain the careful walls I'd built around the truth. But sitting there in that candlelit courtyard, with Pietro looking at me with something that might have been understanding, The words spilled out. My father. Not physically. He never touched me. But every day, every decision was about the gallery, about the collection, about maintaining appearances. When I was 16, I fell in love with a boy from school. Normal boy, middle-class family. He wanted to be a teacher. My father forbade me from seeing him, said he wasn't suitable, that I needed to think about my future, about what kind of connections would benefit the gallery. And you listened. I was 16. I didn't know how to fight him yet. I took a long drink of wine. When I was 23, I thought I'd finally found a way out. Started dating a curator from Florence, someone my father approved of, someone who understood the art world. We were together for 2 years, talked about marriage. What happened? I found out he'd been approached by my father before we'd even met, paid to date me, to keep me occupied and out of trouble while my father negotiated a sale with a particularly difficult Russian oligarch who thought having a beautiful, sophisticated daughter-in-law would legitimize his collection. Pietro's expression darkened. Your father sold you. He called it strategic planning, said I was being dramatic when I confronted him, that this is how their world works. Marriages, relationships, even love. They're all transactions. So you ran. I needed to prove to myself that I could build something on my own terms, that my worth wasn't tied to my last name, or my father's connections, or who I could attract for the sake of business. I met his eyes across the table. And then I met you. And for one night, I felt like I was just a woman with a man who wanted me. Not my connections. Not my family. Just me. You were. You are. But you lied about who you were. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. His hand found mine again, and this time I didn't pull away. Rafaela, I've spent my entire adult life surrounded by people who want things from me. Power, money, protection, introductions, favors. That night, when I saw you sitting at that bar, you looked at me with curiosity instead of calculation. You talked to me about art and philosophy and why the ancient Romans were terrible at portrait sculpture. You laughed at my jokes, not because they were funny, but because you were genuinely amused. And when I kissed you, it was because I wanted to, not because it served some strategic purpose. And now? My voice was barely a whisper. What do you want now? He turned my hand over in his thumb tracing patterns on my palm that made my breath catch. Now I want to finish what we started. I want to know you. Really know you. Not just your body, though Diosa, I haven't stopped thinking about that night. But your mind, your fears, your dreams. What makes you laugh? What makes you angry? I want everything, Kara. And I'm done pretending I don't. You can't just decide that. Why not? Because I'm not some problem you can solve with a phone call. I'm a person with my own life, my own choices. I know that. His gray eyes were intense in the candlelight. That's why I came here myself instead of sending someone to bring you back to Milan. That's why I'm sitting here, asking you to give me a chance, instead of making demands. You have choices, Rafaela. You've always had choices. The question is, what do you choose? Before I could answer, Antonio appeared with the main course. Fresh pasta with seafood, the scent of garlic and white wine and ocean, making my mouth water despite the turmoil in my chest. We ate in silence for a while, the food providing a welcome respite from the intensity of our conversation. But I could feel Pietro watching me between bites, patient in a way that was somehow more unnerving than aggression would have been. If I asked you to leave Palermo, I finally said, to go back to Milan and forget you ever found me, would you? He didn't hesitate. No. Just like that? No consideration? I've spent 6 months trying to forget you, Rafaela. It didn't work. Every woman I saw made me think of you. Every conversation felt empty compared to that one night we spent talking until dawn. Every business dinner, every negotiation, every moment of my carefully controlled life felt hollow because you weren't in it. That's not love. That's obsession. Perhaps. I'm not sure I know the difference anymore. He set down his fork, giving me his complete attention. What I do know is that I've spent my entire life being rational, strategic, controlled. And then I met you, and for the first time I wanted something purely for myself. Not for the family, not for business. Just for me. What are you asking me for, Pietro? Time. A chance to show you that what we had wasn't a mistake or a one-night stand. That it could be something real, something lasting, if you let it. He paused. And I'm asking you to trust me. Trust you? You're a consigliere to the Mafia. Yes. And I'm also the man who held you in the dark and listened to you talk about why Caravaggio's use of light was revolutionary. Who walked with you through Milan's streets at dawn because you wanted to see the city wake up. Who promised you that night that I would never hurt you, and I meant it. Promises are easy to make. Then let me prove mine. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small card, sliding it across the table. This is the address of an apartment I own here in Palermo. It's empty, fully furnished, but no one is living there. It's yours if you want it. I stared at the card like it might bite me. I'm not going to be your mistress. I'm not asking you to be. His voice was patient. I'm offering you a safe place to live. Better than whatever small apartment you're renting on a waitress's salary. No strings attached. If you want to keep working at the cafe, fine. If you want to pursue art again, I can introduce you to galleries here. If you want to tell me to fuck off and never see me again, you can do that too. But at least you'll be safe and comfortable while you decide. Why would you do that? Because taking care of you makes me happy. He said it so simply, as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. Because I have resources that you need, and not using them to help you would be stupid. Because, Raffaella, you've been running and hiding and working yourself into exhaustion for 6 months, and it needs to stop. You can't just, yes, I can, and I am. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then set it aside. The keys will be delivered to your current address tomorrow morning, along with anything else you might need. You can move in whenever you're ready. This is insane. Perhaps. But I've learned that the best opportunities in life often appear insane at first. He signaled for the check, which Antonio brought immediately, waving away Pietro's money with protests about honor and respect. When we were alone again, Pietro stood and offered his hand. Let me take you home. I can take a cab. Humor me, please. Against my better judgment, I let him help me up. His hand was warm and solid in mine, and I hated how right it felt. The drive to my small apartment was quiet. Pietro's driver navigated Palermo's narrow streets with practiced ease, while I stared out the window and tried to process everything that had happened. When we pulled up outside my building, shabby and tired-looking compared to the restaurant we'd left, Pietro walked me to the door. Thank you for dinner, I said formally. Think about the apartment. No pressure. Just comfort and safety, which you deserve. He cupped my face in both hands, his thumbs brushing my cheekbones with devastating gentleness. And think about this. He kissed me then. Not the desperate, hungry kiss from 6 months ago, but something softer. A promise rather than a claim. His lips moved against mine with patience and certainty, and I found myself kissing him back despite every rational thought telling me to stop. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathing hard. Buonanotte, cara, he whispered against my lips. Dream of me. Then he was gone, striding back to the Mercedes with that confident grace, leaving me standing in my doorway with my heart racing and my resolve crumbling around me like ancient stone. The keys arrived at 7 in the morning, delivered by a serious young man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Matteo and handed me a thick envelope along with the key ring. Inside the envelope was the apartment address, security codes, and a note in Pietro's precise handwriting. No obligations, just options. P. I spent the morning shift at the cafe convincing myself I wouldn't use them. That accepting Pietro's offer would be the first step down a path I couldn't return from. That I'd worked too hard for my independence to compromise it now. But when Marco asked me to stay late because his cousin had called in sick, and I realized I'd be pulling a double shift for the 4th time that week, exhaustion won over pride. The apartment was in Palermo's historic district, just a 10-minute walk from the cafe, but in a completely different world. The building was 19th century, beautifully restored, with a courtyard garden and a security system that required 3 different codes to access. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, with high ceilings, tall windows overlooking the street below, and furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. It was easily 3 times the size of my current place. The bedroom had an actual closet instead of just hooks on the wall. The bathroom had a tub deep enough to soak in. The kitchen had appliances that looked like they'd been installed this century. And the living room had built-in bookshelves waiting to be filled. I found myself walking through the space in a daze, touching surfaces, opening cabinets, trying to find something wrong with it. Some evidence of a trap, a catch, a price I'd have to pay. But it was exactly what Pietro had promised, a beautiful, safe space with no strings attached. The note on the kitchen counter, however, made me smile despite myself. The espresso machine is top of the line. I thought you might appreciate good coffee after serving it to tourists all day. IP. I moved in the next day. It was absurdly easy. I barely owned anything after 6 months of deliberate minimalism. My few belongings looked lost in all that space, highlighting how little I'd allowed myself to keep, to own, to value. Pietro didn't contact me for 3 days after that. No calls, no texts, no appearances at the cafe. Just silence, giving me space to adjust to the new apartment, to this new reality where I'd accepted help from a man who terrified and attracted me in equal measure. On the 4th day, I found flowers waiting outside my apartment door. Not roses, too obvious. Instead, a simple arrangement of wildflowers that looked like they'd been picked from a meadow, tied together with rough twine. The card read, "Because you deserve beautiful things that aren't trying too hard. P." I brought them inside, set them on the kitchen counter, and tried not to think about how well he already knew me. How he'd somehow understood that expensive hothouse roses would have felt like a transaction, while wildflowers felt like a gift. The gifts continued. Small things, always. A book I'd mentioned loving during our night together, found in a first edition and left at the cafe's counter with my name on it. Fresh pasta from Teresa, Antonio's wife, delivered weekly with instructions for cooking, and a note saying Pietro had arranged it. A standing order at the local market, so I'd never have to worry about groceries. "He's courting you," Sophia said when I finally called her to explain what was happening. "In the old way. With patience and persistence and gifts that show he's paying attention. I don't want to be courted." "Are you sure?" Her voice was gentle. "Raf, I've known you since we were teenagers. You've never let anyone take care of you. Never accepted help. Never allowed yourself to need someone. Maybe that's what scares you most about Pietro. Not that he's dangerous, but that he makes you want to let him in." Was she right? I'd been so focused on maintaining my independence that I'd forgotten what it felt like to share my life with someone. To have someone notice when I was tired, when I needed help, when I might want something I was too proud to ask for. 2 weeks after I'd moved into the apartment, I was closing the cafe alone when Pietro appeared. Marco had left early for a family dinner, leaving me to lock up. I was counting the register when I felt that familiar prickle of awareness that announced his presence. He stood just inside the door, dressed more casually than I'd ever seen him. Dark jeans, a simple black sweater, no obvious signs of wealth or power. Just a man with gray eyes watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "You need better security here," he said by way of greeting. "The lock on that door is pathetic. I could pick it in under a minute. Are you planning to rob the cafe?" "I'm planning to make sure no one else does." He moved closer, and I became hyper-aware of how alone we were. How the cafe's lights were dim, the street outside quiet. "How was your day?" "Long, tiring, the usual." I finished counting the bills, my fingers fumbling under his scrutiny. "What are you doing here, Pietro?" "Taking you to dinner." "I'm exhausted, I just want to go home." "Then I'll cook for you." The offer was so unexpected that I looked up sharply, finding amusement in his expression. "What? You think just because I'm consigliere I can't handle a kitchen? Cara, I grew up with a Sicilian grandmother. If I couldn't cook, she'd rise from the grave to haunt me." Despite myself, I laughed. "Your grandmother taught you to cook?" "Everything I know about food, yes, and about loyalty and honor and how to read people." His expression softened with memory. "She was the strongest person I've ever known, survived the war, buried 2 sons, and ran the family better than any of the men ever could. She sounds remarkable. She would have liked you." The statement caught me off guard. "Why?" "Because you don't bow, don't bend, don't break." He reached across the counter, his hand hovering near mine. That was her favorite saying. "A woman who bends is broken. A woman who stands tall is steel." "You're steel, Raffaella." I wasn't sure if it was exhaustion or loneliness or the unexpectedly vulnerable look in his eyes, but I found myself nodding. "Okay, you can cook for me, but at my apartment." "Your apartment," I corrected quickly. "Our apartment," he said softly. "If you want it to be." The drive was short, the silence comfortable in a way that surprised me. Pietro's driver dropped us at the building entrance, and I led him upstairs with my heart hammering against my ribs. This felt significant somehow, letting him into my space, allowing this intimacy that went beyond physical desire into something more dangerous. Actual connection. He moved through the apartment with the confidence of someone who'd chosen every piece of furniture, every fixture, every detail with care. In the kitchen, he opened cabinets like he knew exactly where everything was, which, I realized, he probably did. "Sit," he instructed, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator, "and talk to me. Tell me about your day." "Why?" He paused, meeting my eyes across the kitchen island. "Because I want to know. Because hearing about your life, even the boring, mundane parts, makes me happy. Because, Raffaella, I'm trying to prove to you that I'm more than just the consigliere. That I'm a man who wants to know everything about the woman he..." He stopped abruptly. "The woman you what?" "The woman I care about." The admission seemed to cost him something. More than I should. More than is probably safe. But I'm done pretending otherwise. My throat felt tight. "Pietro, don't." He held up a hand. "Don't tell me all the reasons this is a bad idea. I know them. I've listed them myself every night for 6 months. It doesn't change how I feel." He cooked while I talked, and the domesticity of it was almost more intimate than sex had been. Watching him move through the kitchen with practiced ease, listening to him hum softly to himself, seeing the careful attention he paid to every detail, it felt like being given a glimpse behind the mask he wore for the world. The pasta he made was simple but perfect. Aglio e olio, with fresh chili and parsley. We ate at the small dining table, and for the first time since arriving in Palermo, I didn't feel alone. "Tell me about your work," I said as we finished eating. "The real work, not the cleaned-up version." He was quiet for a long moment, considering. "Most of what I do is boring. Contract negotiations, dispute resolution, making sure our legitimate businesses run smoothly. The Morettis have been transitioning for the past 20 years, moving away from the old ways towards something more sustainable. But not entirely legitimate. No, some businesses operate in gray areas, protection mostly, making sure our people and our interests are safe from rivals and outsiders." He poured more wine for both of us. "I won't lie to you, Rafaela. There are aspects of my work that you'd find distasteful. But I'm not a monster. I don't hurt innocent people. And I've spent the last decade working to minimize violence wherever possible. Do you ever want out? Every day." The admission was quiet, but absolute. "But it's not that simple. The family depends on me. Generations of loyalty and tradition weigh on every decision, and walking away would leave a power vacuum that someone worse would fill." "So you're trapped." "I prefer to think of it as fulfilling an obligation." He reached across the table, taking my hand. "But with you, for the first time, I can imagine a different life. One where I'm not just the consigliere, but a man with a woman he loves, a home that's actually a home, a future that's about more than just managing the family business." There was that word again. Love. Said so casually, as though it didn't change everything. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you take your coffee black with 1 sugar. I know you read poetry before bed. I know you hate shallow conversation, but come alive when discussing art or philosophy. I know you're kind to people who serve you, which says more about your character than any grand gesture ever could. I know you're scared of needing anyone because needing people has always meant losing yourself." His thumb traced circles on my palm. "And I know that when I kiss you, you kiss me back even though every rational part of you says you shouldn't. That's just attraction." "Is it?" He stood, pulling me up with him. "Then let's test that theory." He kissed me then, and it was nothing like the controlled kiss outside my old apartment. This was heat and hunger and 6 months of pent-up need crashing together. His hands cupped my face, my jaw, slid into my hair. My hands fisted in his sweater, pulling him closer, needing to eliminate every inch of space between us. We stumbled toward the bedroom, a tangle of reaching hands and desperate kisses. Clothes disappeared in a trail across the floor. And when he finally lifted me onto the bed, looked down at me with those storm-gray eyes dark with desire, I felt something crack open in my chest. "Tell me to stop," he breathed against my lips. "Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away. I'll never push, never force, never take what isn't freely given." "Don't stop," I whispered. "Don't you dare stop." What followed was a reclaiming, a relearning. His hands mapping my body with reverent attention, finding places that made me gasp and shiver. My mouth exploring the strong column of his throat, the defined muscles of his shoulders, the scar on his ribs that I'd never noticed before. "How did you get this?" I traced it with my fingers. "Knife fight when I was 23. Stupid territorial dispute." He kissed me before I could ask more questions. "Ancient history." We made love slowly at first, savoring every touch, every whispered word in Italian and English. But desperation soon won out. 6 months of denial burning away patience until we were moving together with an urgency that felt like drowning in flight all at once. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. Outside, Palermo's night sounds filtered through the window. Distant laughter, music, the eternal rhythm of a city that never truly slept. "Stay," I heard myself say. "Tonight. Just stay." His arms tightened around me. "Always, Kara. For as long as you'll have me." I wanted to tell him it was just tonight. Just this once. That tomorrow we'd return to our separate lives, and this would be nothing more than a beautiful interlude. But as I drifted toward sleep, feeling safer than I had in months, I knew I was lying to myself. I was falling for Pietro Bernardi, and that might be the most dangerous thing I'd ever done. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the scent of coffee. For a moment I was disoriented, caught between sleep and waking. Then memory flooded back. Pietro, dinner, the way his hands had felt on my skin, the sound of my name in his mouth like a prayer. I found him in the kitchen, dressed in yesterday's clothes, his dark hair damp from a shower. He'd somehow managed to find everything he needed, making coffee and what looked like a simple breakfast of fresh bread, cheese, and fruit. "Buongiorno," he said, turning to smile at me. "I thought about cooking, but I wasn't sure when you'd wake up. This seemed safer." I wrapped the robe I'd pulled on tighter around myself. "You didn't have to stay." "I wanted to. Unless you'd prefer I leave?" His tone was casual, but I caught the tension in his shoulders, the way he'd stilled while waiting for my answer. "No, stay. I moved to the coffee pot, needing something to do with my hands. I'm not used to this. Morning afters." "Neither am I." His admission surprised me. Not like this anyway. Usually I'm gone before dawn. Easier that way. No expectations, no complications. And this is complicated. Devastatingly so. He moved behind me, his hands settling on my hips with familiar ease. "But I don't mind complications when they involve you." We ate breakfast with an ease that felt dangerous, as though we'd been doing this for years instead of barely knowing each other. He told me about a meeting he had later that day with the Moretti patriarch, Don Salvatore, who was flying in from Milan specifically to review operations in Sicily. I told him about the art restoration project I'd been following online, a Caravaggio that had been discovered in a French attic. It felt normal, domestic, like playing house in the most dangerous way possible. "I have to go," he finally said, glancing at his watch. "But I'll see you tonight? Dinner?" "Pietro, we can't what?" He cupped my face in his hands. "Spend time together? Get to know each other?" "Kara, I'm not asking you to marry me or join the family business. I'm asking for dinner. Say yes." "Yes," I heard myself agree, as though the word had been waiting all morning to escape. His kiss was brief but thorough, leaving me breathless and already counting hours until evening. When he left, the apartment felt too empty, too quiet. I'd gotten used to the space over the past weeks, but now it felt like something was missing. Someone was missing. I was in trouble. Deep, complicated, dangerous trouble. Work was a welcome distraction. Marco was in high spirits, chattering about his cousin's wedding plans while I made espressos, and tried not to think about gray eyes and strong hands. But I noticed things I hadn't before. The way certain customers deferred to others. The subtle nods of recognition between men in expensive suits. The careful dance of respect and power that played out in seemingly casual interactions. Pietro's world, I realized, was everywhere. I just hadn't been looking for it before. "Raffaella?" Marco's voice broke through my thoughts. "There's someone asking for you." I looked up to find a woman standing at the counter. Mid-30s, elegantly dressed in a silk blouse and tailored pants, with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. She had the kind of beauty that came with money and careful maintenance, but her eyes were cold, assessing. "Raffaella Mancini?" she asked in Italian that carried a Milanese accent. "Yes. Can I help you?" "I'm Isabella Moretti." She said it like I should recognize the name, and with a sinking feeling I did. The Moretti patriarch's daughter. Pietro's boss's daughter. We should talk. Privately. My stomach dropped, but I forced a smile. I'm working right now. It wasn't a request. Her voice hardened. Marco, you don't mind if I borrow your employee for a few minutes, do you? Marco, looking terrified, nodded quickly. Of course, Signora Moretti. Whatever you need. I untied my apron with shaking hands and followed Isabella to one of the corner tables. She waited until I sat before speaking, her gaze never leaving my face. I understand you've been seeing Pietro Bernardi. I don't think that's any of your business. Everything that involves my family's consigliere is my business. She leaned forward slightly. Let me be clear, Miss Mancini. Pietro is not just some man you can have a casual relationship with. He belongs to the Moretti family. His loyalty, his time, his energy, all of it belongs to us. People don't belong to other people. Her laugh was cold. That's a very naive view of our world. But then you're not from our world, are you? You're an outsider, playing at a life you don't understand. And you're here to warn me away? I'm here to offer you a reality check. She pulled a photograph from her purse and slid it across the table. It showed Pietro in Milan, outside a restaurant, with a beautiful blonde woman on his arm. This was taken 3 weeks ago. Her name is Giuliana Rossini, from one of the oldest families in Campania. Educated, sophisticated, and more importantly, someone who understands our world and her place in it. The image felt like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. If Pietro is with someone else, that's between him and me. He's not with her. Yet. But marriages in our world aren't about love, Miss Mancini. They're about alliances. And the Rossini family has something we need. My father is pushing for this match. Pietro knows his duty. Then why are you here? Because despite his intelligence, Pietro has always had a weakness for the wrong women. And you, with your art world sophistication and your independence, you're exactly the kind of distraction he doesn't need right now. She leaned back, her expression almost sympathetic. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying you're bad for him, bad for the family. And in our world, that's the same thing. Does Pietro know you're here? Pietro knows where his loyalties lie, but apparently, you needed it spelled out more clearly. She stood, smoothing her blouse with precise movements. Take some advice from someone who knows this life. Walk away now, before you get hurt. Before you cost Pietro everything he's worked for. Be the bigger person. After she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the photograph. Pietro looked different in it, more formal, his expression guarded in a way I'd never seen. The woman on his arm was stunning, confident, clearly comfortable in the world of wealth and power. Everything I wasn't. Everything I'd run from. Raffaella? Marco touched my shoulder gently. Are you okay? Fine, I lied. Just fine. I finished my shift on autopilot, going through the motions while my mind spun. Isabella's warning played on repeat, each word cutting deeper. I'd been fooling myself, thinking I could have something real with Pietro. He lived in a world where duty trumped desire, where marriages were strategic alliances, where love was a luxury people like him couldn't afford. When Pietro showed up at 8 o'clock as promised, I was ready. Or I thought I was. Cara, I thought we could try this new place near the marina. He stopped when he saw my face. What's wrong? Isabella Moretti came to see me today. His expression darkened instantly. What did she say? That you belong to the family. That you have duties I'm distracting you from. That you're supposed to marry some Rossini woman for political reasons. I held up the photograph. Is this true? He took the photo, his jaw tight. Where did you get this? Does it matter? Is it true, Pietro? Are you promised to someone else? It's complicated. It's not complicated. I stood, needing distance. Either you're free to be with me or you're not. Which is it? My father and Don Salvatore have discussed a potential alliance with the Rossinis, yes. But nothing is finalized. Nothing is agreed to. But it will be. Not if I refuse. And will you? Refuse? I challenged. Or will you do your duty to the family, like Isabella said? Because that's what people like you do, isn't it? You put the family first. Always. You don't understand? I understand perfectly. My voice broke despite my efforts to control it. I understand that I was stupid to think this could work. That you could choose me over your obligations. That what we have could matter more than family politics and strategic alliances. It does matter. He crossed to me, gripping my shoulders. Rafaela, you matter more than any alliance, more than any political benefit. You matter more than anything. Pretty words. But Isabella made it clear that in your world, love doesn't trump duty. And I won't be someone's mistress while you marry for politics. I won't be the woman you come to when you need to feel human, while you build your life with someone appropriate. That's not... It is exactly what would happen. I pulled away from him. I've seen this before, Pietro. My father's world was full of men who had wives for show and mistresses for pleasure. I won't be that woman. I'm not asking you to be. Then what are you asking? For me to wait while you figure out how to navigate family expectations? For me to be patient while you play politics with your life? With our lives? I'm asking you to trust me. His voice was desperate now, nothing like the controlled consigliere. Trust that I'll find a way, that I won't let the family dictate who I love. Love, I repeated softly. You keep using that word like it solves everything. But it doesn't. Love isn't enough when you live in a world where duty comes first. Then I'll change the world. The absolute certainty in his voice made me pause. You can't just... Watch me. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Don Salvatore, it's Pietro. We need to talk. Now. Yes, I know you're in meetings. This is more important. I'm refusing the Rossini alliance. No, it's not negotiable. I've found someone. Someone I'm choosing for myself. You can accept it or find a new consigliere. He ended the call and looked at me. There. It's done. Pietro, you can't just... The family will adjust. They always do. He cupped my face in his hands. Rafaela, I've spent my entire life doing what was expected, fulfilling obligations, putting the family first. But you make me want to be selfish. You make me want to choose myself, my happiness, my future. And that future includes you, if you'll have me. It's not that simple, Isabella said. Isabella is trying to protect me the only way she knows how. By maintaining the status quo, by ensuring nothing disrupts the family structure. But I don't need that kind of protection. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone. What I need is you. Your intelligence, your strength, your ability to call me on my bullshit, your insistence on living authentically. You make me better, Rafaela. And I'm done pretending that doesn't matter more than any political alliance. Your family will hate me. Probably, at first, but they'll come around. And if they don't, he shrugged, then I'll build something new. With you. Tears spilled down my cheeks despite my efforts to hold them back. This is crazy. Yes, beautifully, perfectly crazy. He kissed me softly. Say yes, Kara. Say you'll give us a real chance. Not just stolen nights and secret dinners, but an actual relationship. Public, committed, real. I wanted to be practical. To list all the reasons this was a terrible idea. To protect myself from inevitable heartbreak. But looking into his gray eyes, seeing the vulnerability he rarely showed anyone, I couldn't form the words. Yes, I whispered instead. Yes, you crazy, impossible man. Yes. His smile was brilliant, transforming his face. You won't regret this. I'm already regretting it, I said, but I was smiling too. But I'm saying yes anyway. He kissed me then, deep and thorough, a claiming and a promise all at once. And for the first time since Isabella's visit, I let myself hope that maybe, just maybe, we could make this work, even if the world we inhabited made it nearly impossible. The Moretti patriarch arrived in Palermo 3 days later, and Pietro insisted I come to the meeting. You're part of this now, he said as we drove to the family's Sicilian estate. They need to meet you, to see that you're not some flight of fancy or distraction. And if they don't approve? His jaw tightened. Then they'll learn to live with disappointment. The estate was stunning, a 17th century villa perched on hills overlooking the sea, surrounded by orange groves and vineyards. Guards were posted at the gates, subtle but unmistakable. This was the heart of Moretti power in Sicily, and I was walking into it holding Pietro's hand. Don Salvatore Moretti was in his 70s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that commanded instant respect. He stood when we entered his study, Isabella at his side, along with 2 men I didn't recognize, but who clearly held positions of power. So, this is the woman worth refusing the Rossini alliance for, Don Salvatore said, his gaze assessing me with unsettling thoroughness. She's younger than I expected. Prettier, too. She's also in the room and can speak for herself, I replied, before Pietro could respond. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me, Don Salvatore. A smile tugged at the old man's lips. Bold. Pietro always did prefer bold women. Sit, both of you. We have much to discuss. The meeting that followed was unlike anything I'd experienced. Don Salvatore asked pointed questions about my background, my family, my intentions with Pietro. Isabella interjected with thinly veiled criticisms. The other men, Pietro's seconds I learned, observed silently, weighing every word I spoke. My daughter believes you're a liability, Don Salvatore finally said, that your lack of understanding about our world makes you dangerous to Pietro's position. Your daughter may be right, I conceded. I don't understand your world. I don't want to understand all of it, but I do understand loyalty. And I'm loyal to Pietro. To the man, not the title. If that makes me a liability, then so be it. The man and the title are inseparable. Are they? I leaned forward. Because the Pietro I know, the one who cooks pasta at midnight and talks about his grandmother's wisdom and reads poetry when he thinks no one's watching, that man is separate from the consigliere. And I'm choosing him. Not his position. Him. Don Salvatore was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he laughed. She's got fire, Pietro. I'll give you that. His expression sobered. But fire alone isn't enough. The Rossini alliance would have brought us considerable advantages. Trade routes, political connections, access to markets we currently can't touch. What does she bring us? Happiness, Pietro said simply. She brings me happiness. And a happy consigliere is a more effective one. You've told me that yourself, Don Salvatore. That a man without something to fight for is a man without purpose. I meant fight for the family. She is my family now. Or she will be if she'll have me. The room went silent. Isabella's expression darkened. Don Salvatore's eyes narrowed, and my heart stopped beating for several long seconds. Pietro, I started, but he squeezed my hand, cutting me off. I've served the Morettis faithfully for a decade, he continued. I've negotiated deals that saved us millions. I've prevented wars that would have cost dozens of lives. I've never asked for anything personal. Not once. But I'm asking now. Let me have this. Let me have her. And I promise you, my loyalty won't waver. My service won't diminish. If anything, I'll be stronger for having something real to protect. Don Salvatore studied us both for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he sighed. You're putting me in a difficult position, Pietro. The Rossinis won't take this lightly. Giuliana's father already considers this engagement as good as sealed. Then I'll handle the Rossinis, Pietro said. I'll find another way to give the family what they need from that alliance, but Raffaella is non-negotiable. And if I refuse? Then you'll have my resignation. Isabella gasped. One of the other men swore softly. Don Salvatore's expression went cold. You'd leave the family over a woman you barely know? I'd leave because you taught me that a man without integrity is nothing. And I'd have no integrity if I promised myself to Raffaella while remaining bound to your expectations about who I should marry. So yes, if you force me to choose, I choose her. The tension in the room was suffocating. I wanted to speak, to tell Pietro it wasn't worth losing everything, but the look he gave me stopped the words in my throat. Don Salvatore stood, walking to the window overlooking the orange groves. When he spoke, his voice was tired. Your grandmother would be proud of you. Or furious. I haven't decided which. She always said that love was worth fighting for. She also said that family came first. Raffaella is my family now. The patriarch turned, and I saw something like resignation in his eyes. Very well. If you're so certain, if you're willing to stake your position on this, then I won't stand in your way. But understand this, Pietro. The Rossinis will need to be handled delicately, and you'll need to prove that this woman is worth the complications she's bringing. I will. And you... Don Salvatore's gaze fixed on me. If you hurt him, if you betray his trust, if you use his affection to compromise this family's interests, you'll discover exactly how unforgiving we can be. Are we clear? Perfectly clear, Don Salvatore. Good. Then I suppose congratulations are in order. He didn't sound happy about it, but he extended his hand to Pietro. Don't make me regret this decision. After we left the estate, I waited until we were in the car before speaking. You're insane. You just threatened to quit over me. I meant every word. Pietro, your entire life is the Morettis. You can't just... My entire life was the Morettis, he corrected. Past tense. Now my life is going to include other things. You. A future that's about more than just managing family business. Maybe a family of our own someday if you want that. You're talking about children when we've barely started this. I'm talking about possibilities, Cara. About a future I never let myself imagine before you. His hand found mine. I meant what I said in there. You're my family now. And I protect my family. 2 weeks later, the threats started. First, it was just notes left on my doorstep. Anonymous warnings to stay away from what doesn't belong to you. Then my cafe locker was broken into. Nothing stolen, but everything touched, violated. Finally, someone followed me home from work, staying just far enough back that I couldn't get a good look, but close enough to make their presence known. Pietro was furious when I told him. The Rossinis, he growled, pacing his apartment like a caged predator. They're sending a message. What kind of message? That you're vulnerable, that I can't protect you, that choosing you over Giuliana was a mistake. His expression turned cold, calculating. They're miscalculating. Badly. What are you going to do? What I do best, solve the problem. He made several calls in rapid Italian, his tone clipped and commanding. When he finished, he pulled me into his arms. You're moving in here, permanently, and Matteo will be assigned as your full-time security, non-negotiable. Pietro, I can't live my life surrounded by bodyguards. You can, and you will. At least until the Rossinis understand that you're untouchable. He tilted my chin up. Raffaella, in my world, threats against family aren't idle. They're warnings before action, and I won't risk losing you because I was too stubborn to take precautions. I moved into Pietro's apartment the next day. It felt like surrendering my hard-won independence, but I couldn't deny the reality of the danger. The Rossinis were powerful, connected, and clearly willing to use violence to make their point. What I didn't expect was how right it would feel. Living with Pietro, sharing space, falling into routines together. He made me breakfast before his meetings. I left him notes about interesting art exhibitions. We cooked together, argued about philosophy, made love with an urgency that suggested we both knew this happiness was fragile. And slowly, I began to understand his world. The careful balance of respect and power, the unwritten rules that governed interactions, the way loyalty was currency and betrayal was met with swift retribution. It was Pietro himself who taught me, patiently explaining the context behind seemingly casual comments, the significance of who sat where at family dinners, the meaning behind certain gestures and phrases. He was introducing me to his world not as a liability to be protected, but as a partner who needed to understand the game being played. The night everything changed, we were having dinner at Antonio's restaurant, the place that had become ours in the weeks since our reunion. Pietro had just finished telling me about a successful negotiation when his phone rang. His expression shifted as he listened, hardening into something cold and dangerous. When he ended the call, he was no longer the man I'd been having dinner with, but the consigliere. We need to leave. Now. What happened? The Rossinis made their move. They've taken someone. Fear clenched my stomach. Who? Marco, from the cafe. His gray eyes met mine, and I saw fury there. They took him because he's connected to you, because he was your friend before he was under my protection. They're sending a message. Oh God, is he? He's alive, for now. But they want to trade. Trade for what? You. The word hung between us like a death sentence. They wanted me, were willing to hurt an innocent boy to get me, to prove that Pietro couldn't protect what was his, that choosing me over Juliana had consequences. Then I'll go, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I'll trade myself for Marco. He doesn't deserve to be caught up in this. Absolutely not. Pietro's voice was ice. You're not going anywhere near the Rossinis. But Marco will be fine, because I'm going to end this tonight. He stood, pulling me up with him. Matteo will take you to Don Salvatore's estate. You'll be safe there while I handle this. Handle how? The only way the Rossinis will understand. His jaw was set, his expression harder than I'd ever seen it. By showing them exactly what happens when they threaten mine. Pietro, please, don't do anything. Anything what? Violent, dangerous. Cara, I've been playing nice, trying to navigate this diplomatically because you make me want to be a better man. But there comes a point where diplomacy fails, where the only language understood is power. He cupped my face in his hands. Trust me, I'll get Marco back safely. And I'll make sure the Rossinis never threaten you again. Promise me you'll be careful. Always. He kissed me, fierce and desperate. I love you, Raffaella Mancini, and I'm done letting anyone stand between us and our future. Then he was gone, leaving me with Matteo, and a fear so profound it made breathing difficult. The hours that followed were the longest of my life. Don Salvatore kept me in his study, offering expensive brandy I couldn't drink, and making conversation I couldn't follow. Isabella watched me with something that might have been sympathy, though it was hard to tell. Finally, near midnight, Pietro called. It's done. Marco is safe. The Rossinis won't be bothering us again. What did you do? What needed to be done? His voice was tired, flat. I'll explain when I see you, but Raffaella, Things are going to change now. I've made decisions that will have consequences. For the family. For us. What kind of decisions? The kind that mean I'm choosing you over everything else. Over my position, over family politics, over my own safety. I'm all in, Kara. Completely, irrevocably yours. When he finally arrived at the estate hours later, I barely recognized him. His clothes were rumpled, his expression haunted. But when he saw me, when I ran to him and wrapped my arms around him, some of the tension left his body. I broke ranks, he said quietly as I held him. Went directly to the Rossini patriarch. Made it clear that another move against you would be considered an act of war. Not just against me, but against the entire Moretti family. Don Salvatore backed me, publicly, in front of all the families. That's good, isn't it? It means you're officially under Moretti protection, that anyone who touches you answers to Don Salvatore himself. But it also means... He pulled back to look at me. It means I've announced my intentions, that you're not just some woman I'm seeing. You're mine, in every way that matters in our world. Pietro, I'm not apologizing. I won't pretend I didn't just stake my entire reputation on us. But I need to know. After everything you've seen, everything you know now about my world and what I'm capable of, do you still want this? Want me? I looked at this man who'd upended my careful life, who'd pursued me across Italy, who'd just gone to war with powerful families for the crime of threatening me. He was dangerous, yes, part of a world I'd tried to escape, but he was also the man who cooked me breakfast and read poetry and looked at me like I was his entire world. Yes, I said firmly. I want this. I want you. All of you, including the complicated, dangerous parts. His relief was palpable. You're sure? I'm terrified, but I'm sure. I took his hand. We'll figure this out together. The family politics, the power games, all of it. But Pietro, you have to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more protecting me from the truth. If I'm going to be part of your world, I need to understand all of it, the good and the bad. Deal. No more secrets. He kissed me softly. Starting now. I love you, Raffaella. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that choosing you was the best decision I ever made. The rest of your life is a long time. Not long enough, he replied. Not nearly long enough for everything I want to do with you. 6 months later, we stood in that same courtyard at Antonio's restaurant, surrounded by friends and family. Pietro's grandmother's ring on my finger, his hand holding mine as we exchanged vows that had nothing to do with family politics or strategic alliances, and everything to do with choosing each other every single day. Don Salvatore attended, his presence a clear signal of approval that silenced any remaining critics. Isabella came too, and while we'd never be best friends, we'd reached an understanding. Even Sophia made the trip from Milan, crying through the entire ceremony. I can't believe you're actually doing this, she whispered afterward, hugging me tightly. Marrying a consigliere, living in Palermo, becoming part of that world. Believe it, I replied, watching Pietro laugh with Antonio across the courtyard. Because I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I was. It wasn't the life I'd planned or even imagined 6 months ago when I'd fled Milan. It was complicated and sometimes dangerous, and required navigation of power structures I was still learning. But it was real, honest, built on a foundation of choice rather than obligation. Pietro caught my gaze from across the courtyard, and his smile was purely for me. My husband, my partner, the man who'd refused to let me run, who'd fought for us when it would have been easier to let me go, who'd chosen love over duty and happiness over obligation. I smiled back, and in that moment, I understood. Sometimes the most dangerous choice was also the right one. And sometimes, surrendering to the pull of an impossible love was the bravest thing you could do. We'd figure out the rest as we went. Together. Always together.